Hey guys, this is Pedro and I'm back with a brand new interview. This time I am accompanied by EU of 100 Thieves prior to the start of the 2024 VCT season and also the America's kickoff event. Like I said before the start of this recording, thank you so much, EU, for the time. And I just want to start off by just covering the fact that you're with a new team, and not only that, a tier 1 team, a VCT team in 100 Thieves after spending the previous year in M80. So, what's the feeling like for you right now, finally reaching VCT and just being a part of 100 Thieves?
Yeah, I mean, before the whole franchise thing really started, I was on Energy for 2 whole years. I was on Energy since they really entered Valorant, and then going into franchising, Energy made it obviously, but I ended up getting replaced by Crashies because they picked up the whole optic core with FNS, Crashies, and Victor. So not being able to make it in for the first year definitely kind of sucked, but I do think playing on M80 last year was like the best year I've ever had in my career, even though it was considered tier two. I've made top four in like regional tournaments before on Energy. Like we made top four for stage two, so we are like a game or two off of qualifying for Reykjavik. But I do think on M80, winning pretty much like every single game except like the very, very last game definitely felt like a way more successful year for me personally. So coming from M80 and then bringing that into 100 Thieves definitely feels good. It feels good now to finally be able to play in the franchise league, considering I didn't get to do it last year. And having all the experience and the things that I learned from M80 and Energy in the past to bring it into 100 Thieves definitely feels nice, considering we have a different perspective from EG with our IGL and our coach, and then the whole 100 Thieves core that stayed from last year. It's definitely new, and it's definitely a fun experience for sure, being able to be here in Americas.
Yeah, and it was a pleasure looking at that A80 team do their best, despite not winning Ascension and losing to the ex guard people that are now in G2. But you mentioned
Mhm.
about how much of an experience, how good of an experience it was to be with M80. In what way did it make it such for you to then be at the level where you join 100 Thieves following the year?
Yeah, I mean, my goal has always been to be in the franchise league, so it sucks that we didn't make it on M80. You know, we got all the way to the final hurdle, we got to the finish line, and then we couldn't just cross it. But being on 100 Thieves as like an organization is definitely crazy. 100 Thieves being like one of the most prominent organizations in the game for a long time. They have a lot of history. They've won First Strike, which like dates back so long ago. So 100 Thieves has been in like pretty much since the beginning. They have a lot of fans. They have a lot of passionate fans for sure. That's kind of what I've come to notice being on 100 Thieves. You know, you'll have more haters, but you also have more supporters. So I do think it's cool. The transition I'm still definitely getting used to, but I can't wait for this year.
Oh yeah, for sure. And of course, as I mentioned in the beginning of this conversation, you are one of the newest people joining the team from N80, in addition to Boostio and also Zix as the head coach. But what has it been like, playing with this new core of players for a new team? How do you compare that with what your experience was like in M80 and having to play in a different core there? So how would you compare the two right now?
Yeah, I'm definitely entering like a new system, so having to get used to it is definitely always going to be more difficult towards the beginning. Going from Energy to M80, even going into like a new system on M80 was also difficult at the beginning, but I do think like the whole EG core that Boosty and Tony had last year, they're trying to bring in like a lot of things that they did last year, kind of that they thought was good. I mean, they won champs, so it makes sense to be honest with you.
Mhm.
Coming from M80, we definitely did a lot of things differently that I'm still gonna have to get used to on 100 Thieves because changing the system, changing the way you play, changing like how your role works, how you practice, all these things. I definitely think like from M80 to 100 Thieves, it feels different. Not a bad different, but it just feels different. So it's something I have to get used to. But it's definitely interesting to have it from the perspective of a team where it's like, all right, this guy led the championship winning team last year. They also got second at at Masters Tokyo as well. So pretty insane year. And having that guy come into your team and basically be like, yo, I think this is good. I think this is how we should do this. It's like, all right, whatever you want, we'll do whatever you say. So also having Tony, who was my old coach on Energy in the past, my assistant coach, having him now as our head coach, getting to meet him again, it's like a familiar face, but also teaming with him again, I can tell that he's like learned certain things from EG last year that he didn't have with us on Energy. So taking that all in at once, getting used to the new system, it's definitely a learning experience.
Oh yeah, for sure. And what's it been like also playing with those that were already in the team, before before the new people, including yourself, join the ranks. Of course, I'm talking about Asuna, Bang, and Kryoso. So, what has it been like playing with them and the adjustments you had to make since the start up until now?
Yeah, I think all my teammates are insane. I mean, to be honest, I think the biggest like pull factor of 100 Thieves in the past always has been that they have mechanical talent. Like everybody on 100 Thieves has crazy aim. I think I heard Boosty talk about it before in like another interview, maybe like a 100 Thieves interview, where he said basically like all four of my teammates can be the best players in the world. We can all like parallel to like Fnatic. Like if you want to beat Fnatic, sometimes you just have to shoot them. I think I have the teammates on this team to where it's like if we have to be in that scenario where we have to just shoot them, it's good to have these teammates. So the three that you mentioned, like the core, Cryo, Bang, and Asuna. I've known Asuna for a long time before because of Counter-Strike, but not knowing Bang and Matt doesn't really matter as much. But they are insane mechanically. Super happy to play the year with them, and I can't wait to see like how far our teamwork can go. Because obviously that continues to raise with the amount of time that you spend in the year. However, like the mechanics are going to be there from like step one. So going into like early scrims with the team, I could see like how good everybody was just from the get go. And then obviously like you'll work on like chemistry, you'll work on like strategy, defaults, executes, all that stuff. It'll come with time.
Yeah, and looking into the how the off season transpired for 100 Thieves. Of course, you mentioned a little bit of the things that the customer things, the usual things that are worked upon. Synergy, working together, compositions, defaults, stuff like that. Um, in doing so, what has been one of the things that you feel had to be worked on to make such a to make this team be at its current state? What were some of the things that were tweaked within the server, maybe outside of the server as well, that made such a transition possible during the off season?
Um, I just don't think there's been enough time to really have like this point hit because like for example, like going into like the Ludwig Tarek Invitational, we just introed maps to the sense of like we took a map, we ran like one default on it on T side, we had like one CT setup really, and then everything else was pretty much on the fly. So we didn't have a set execute, we didn't talk about scaling, we didn't talk about utility, we didn't talk really about like anything or even like we talked about the philosophy on how we want to play the map, but that's basically what I mean. Like we took the maps, we introed them, and then we went into the Tarek Ludwig Invitational because that's all the time that we really had prior to that event. So going into the qualifying matches for Madrid, for example, we're going to like continue that, make sure we have defaults or executes and everything and all that. I think that's probably where we spent the most time, getting all this because introing maps takes a while. Then when you start getting like defaults, executes, you get all that down. Everything is kind of just reps. Like you go into scrims and you're like, all right, let's do the execute again. Let's like change this part of the execute because they're playing this agent. Let's change this piece of utility. How are we going to play the round against this comp? How are we going to rotate against this comp? Are we pushing through? What info is valuable? What's not? So like getting all that on a new team, definitely the most time consuming. I think it's the part that like changes the team the most. I had to do it on energy initially when I first played, and then M80 it was the same way. The first like month or so or month or two of M80 was just hard grind, hard prac. When we went into the season in tier two last year, we went in after already practicing for like 3 or 4 months of just hard 5 streams a day, like 2 hours of server. We'd do like 2 hours of auto view just every single day, pounding at it to make sure that we'd be ready by the time the season started. But since like the way that like the whole off season was formatted this year and like when the 100 Thieves roster was built, we didn't really have that same time. It was kind of formed like towards the end when we got Boosty. We just played with a sub for the Japan event. We played with Nature. So yeah, getting all that stuff down, definitely the most time consuming, but I mean, eventually we'll get through it.
Oh yeah, of course. And that said, when you talk about what the team went through in the offseason, then the matter does come into question regarding how the team has dealt with the recent changes to the game. Such as having a brand new map pool, bringing in Icebox and also Breeze, and also the new changes to the agent, specifically Sky. Um, and how it affects the team. So I want to know from your perspective, how has these recent changes, in consideration of how of when it was implemented, is it being so late and it being so close to the start of the season has affected this team in particular, and also your individual performance?
Hmm. Yeah, I think it really sucks considering I just talked about like how long it takes to intro maps, for example. Considering we introed like Haven and then it just gets removed, it getting removed really close to when we have to start playing definitely like highly impacts the amount of time that we spend because we had so many scrims on a map like Haven, for example, to introduce it, to make sure we knew what comp we wanted to run. It's like a complicated map. There's a lot of comps that you can run on that map because of comp diversity. And then it's just subbed out for, Icebox, Breeze, all these maps that just came in. So I think the plus side is that the maps that did get subbed in, Breeze and Icebox and Breeze, like coming into the rotation, they aren't very I don't want to say they're not complicated maps, but like comp diversity, for example, on those maps doesn't really shift too much. So like a map like Haven, there's a lot that you can learn. There's a lot that you can call. The rounds can get pretty complicated and pretty diverse with like 4 phases, 5 phases in the round. But Breeze and Icebox, like Icebox, you could just slam 12 rounds with like a different pace every single round, and you'll have like a decent half as long as you like slow down on some rounds, speed up, make sure that there's like no operators. So they aren't like too hard of a map to intro, but like going into like the Ludwig Tarek Invitational, I think we had like 1, 2 scrims on Icebox, 3 scrims maybe. So like it's just I don't think it's good that it was changed super close to the start of Americas, but I mean it is what it is. There's nothing we can really do. We just have to adapt. Definitely sucks for us considering we had the intro maps, but yeah.
Does it make you feel like the team is at square one because the changes that affect is not just this team but also the rest of the team, mostly focusing on 100 Thieves in particular? Do you feel like the team is at back at square one when it comes to understanding and just having to work with the new state of the game?
Well, I mean, we kind of had to like reset the team going into the year anyway, because when you pick up like a different coach and a different IGL, you kind of have to build like a new system around the team. So I would say like going into the team this year, the system that they had last year isn't really the same thing that we're running with this year. It's going to be like a little more loose and whatnot. It's just that you kind of have to do it with like every new team. Like when I first joined M80, it was the same way. When I joined 100 Thieves, it's the same way. We had to do like call outs on every single map and like doing all these new things. And then having the map reset like that to where all the time that we spent on like Haven, so like we made call outs, we practiced the map, talked about like the philosophy on the map and all that, and then having it reset definitely resets us to stage one for the new maps. But it also does for all the other teams. So like we barely got the Scrim Icebox, but every other team also barely got the Scrim Icebox because it wasn't in the rotation. So I do think it's fine considering that we're on the same kind of square as all these other teams on the newer maps. It just kind of sucks because teams who have been together already, like all of last year, so like take Fnatic for example, they have a really good Lotus. They're not going to have to intro their Lotus at all because they've won the entire year except like one game against Loud. So Fnatic not having to like intro their Lotus or even work on it really, considering they didn't run like a Sky or anything like that. None of their agents really got nerfed is just, I think, like a really big advantage. So other teams, for example, like G2, we played them in Ascension last year. All of the maps that they worked on last year, they could still, play this year, obviously. They have the same comps, or they could have the same comps, they could have the same like agent pools for their players and whatnot. So it's definitely like a little bit of a disadvantage considering they have that. But I mean, that's just what happens when you don't make roster changes. So
It's just a matter of just figuring out and just working around with the team and just having to gain a good understanding of the game and just doing it in a way that best everyone else in particular. And so
mhm,
now pivoting towards yourself with a few more questions before we wrap it up.
mhm.
Now that you're back into tier one after spending a year in M80, I want to know which teams slash players do you most want to face for this event and also everything else that comes after that.
I mean, I don't know if I have like a favorite team that I want to play. I mean, I really want to play every team to be honest with you. Like some teams we weren't able to scrim yet because they're in our group and whatnot. So like going into like all these matches, I just want the ability to be able to play every team at least once. Every team has their own little play style and their own little niches. They have this good player who plays like this and whatnot. So I kind of want to just experience that and see what it's like. I've been able to scrim like a lot of the good teams on M80s. So, like we've scrimmed Loud back then when it was like Aspas and Les on that team before he joined Lev and all this. It's just different in a match. I want to be in like a match setting against every single team. I would say like I have a lot of friends on Energy that I hang out with sometimes. So I would say, I mean, I'd want to play Energy the most, maybe. It's not that I want to beat them the most, I don't think. It's just like, I have friends on the team, so it'd be funny playing Energy, talking about the match after.
Oh, of course. What about taking on against JohnQc? Your former IG on
Yeah.
M80. Where does that reside in your list of teams you want to face?
Yeah, I don't have like a crazy priority to want to play my old teammate. I have a lot of respect for JohnQc. I talked about him in another interview about how they asked me what player should you watch out for this year? And I thought about like what new player coming into America should you watch out for this year? And I thought about like the people that were coming in, and I like teaming with John on M80. I think he's a good IGL. I think his calls were good. I think his attitude towards the game is good, and I think he's a chill person. So I give him like I tip my hat to him. I have respect for him. I hope his year goes out well, knowing that he joined Sentinels. Also like a good organization for him. I'm sure he's been excited to join an organization like Sentinels. They had a good offseason as well. So going into like the Madrid qualifiers and whatnot, I mean, he's in our group, so like I'd be happy to play him. But I also want to face Loud. So I've never played Loud in like a non-scrim format. I'd love to play Sodhawk and Les, and these people who've been playing for a long, long time. Kao and Zine had a crazy year. Tui's had a crazy year. They just picked up QCK. So there's no like no priority for me, to be honest with you.
Right, right. And in you tipping your hat to John, I tip my hat to you for making this interview possible. EU, once again, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time, and best of luck goes to the team, but most importantly, yourself for
Hmm.
this coming year.
All right, thank you so much, man. Thank you for the
All right, no
interview.
problem. All right, thank you so much. Take care, man.